Hello, and welcome back to the McDude Project. This is the second part of our project to shoot down 5 bombers with heavy fighters of the Imperial Japanese Air Force. If you've been paying attention to the tally so far, we've shot down 1 PBY and 1 P-39. We have an assist on the Messerschmitt 410, a Wellington, and a B-17, and I chased an IL-4 right out of the game. But that's not good enough. Only the PBY counts towards the challenge. So I have to shoot down 4 more bombers. So, without further ado, let's get to the action. So, first off, since I spent the first 4 minutes cruising around in circles looking for targets, I've sped the action up 4 times normal speed. The aircraft we're looking at is the Ki-45 Otsu with 1 37mm cannon and 2 20mm cannons. It is dolled up in the Homeland Defense scheme with the white identification bands around the fuselage and the wings for quick identification by Japanese anti-aircraft units. And this was used in 1945 when the Japanese Air Force was scrambling to meet the B-29 threat. At this point, I'm on the west side of the African Canyon map, scrambling to meet the bomber threat, where bombers are being sent out to harass one of our bases on that side. I'm hoping to score a quick kill. Let's see how it goes. So I just began to line up on a IL-4 Soviet medium bomber when the aircraft went into a radical vertical dive, which I don't understand why it did that, because the aircraft has an internal bomb bay. It's not capable of releasing its bombs in a vertical dive. It's just not a dive bomber. So exactly what the pilot was up to is beyond me, because while I'm firing on the way down, the aircraft can't release any of its ordnance. And I don't know why the AI says weird stuff like that. But the IL-4 swung around and began to egress in the opposite direction, released its ordnance, missed the target, and started flying down the Canyon River trying to get away from me. I had shot my power, swung the aircraft around quickly, and went in a hot pursuit, firewalling the engines on my way out. You can barely see the IL-4 hugging the mountain, hugging the cliffs as it swings around. It's going to go back for the target again. I made some sharp turns, took some shots at it. Again, I had to chop the power, swing the aircraft around. By this time I was beginning to get frustrated. I was starting to take chances that I don't normally take. I put my nose on the target, unloaded a few rounds, and cut its wing off. Boom. Number 2. And that's the base he hit. None the worse for wear. I would like to see Gaijin do a better job on these bases. But for now, they're okay. They don't really look that bad. And they give bomber pods something to do, and dedicated bomber interceptors something to do. So it makes the game more fun. So I continue on my patrol, looking for another target. When I found a B-25 beginning to focus, that was focusing on ground targets. I took a few shots at it as it took out some more ground targets. The aircraft was the B-25 was very two-dimensional. That is, that it just flew around in a, turning around cliffs, turning around mountains, in a very two-dimensional fashion. That said, it managed to evade me for the most part. It was very difficult to put rounds out around it when my rounds would end up in mountains. It went into this tight valley, and about this time an LA-5 showed up and stole the kill. So yeah. So as I pulled out of the valley, there wasn't that much of the game left. Both sides have been doing a good job of concentrating on ground targets. So the game moved on. So Mission 6 found me on, I believe this one is the African coast map, the new map. I only flew around for about 2 minutes before I found the next target. It was a B-25, considerably above me. I went into a vertical climb to start taking shots at it. Of course, I fired too late. It rolled unnaturally. After I come around, I level the aircraft out. I begin accelerating to close on the target. And the bomber gunner begins developing a pattern where he sees me flying low, so he shoots low in a burst. So I see the burst coming and I move high. And then he sees me flying high, so he shoots high in a burst. So I simply move low. And this goes back and forth with me moving low and high to avoid his bursts that are rather predictable after a while. At one point, my gun jams. And I have to wait and follow him, closing in on the target, because I don't want to lose him with no guns, which is why you see me closing in on him and not firing. When the guns finally kick in, I take some shots. Unfortunately, he gets me in the left engine, but I get him. So I end up trading the enemy airplane for airplane, which is really not the idea. But at least I got my third aircraft. And I like the graphics of the pilots bailing out. It's kind of cool. So next up is the KI-96 heavy fighter. We discussed this in the last game. So far, the aircraft's debut has been less than stellar. All I managed to do was chase an IL-4 off the map. This time around, after less than a minute of cruising, I encounter a B-25 Mitchell, yet another B-25, I should say. The B-25 is a very dangerous airplane. It has twin 50 calibers in its turret, twin 50 calibers in the tail position. That's a lot of lead flying back at you. That said, the KI-96 is capable of throwing a lot of lead at the airplane. And now that I've been flying for about 4 hours and I got my mojo together, I'm able to dispatch with the aircraft rather quickly. And there you go. Now, just beyond that B-25 was yet another plane. It was a Japanese, I believe it was a KI-96 Helen bomber. I immediately opened up on it, and I would have had it if the game hadn't ended. But the game did end, and I found myself on an air domination map. I believe I'm in Sicily, firing on a bomber and mowing the lawn, as you can see, because I took a dive when I should have taken the dive. I also missed that twin-engine bomber. I don't even know what it was. I've frozen that stream a couple times and don't remember what it was. But anyway, now we find ourselves accelerating the game yet again over the next 3 or 4 minutes as I fly around circling for targets I almost was going to cap an airfield, but one of my teammates ended up capping the airfield, so I pulled the landing gear up, cleaned out the aircraft, continued on my way. And you can see the wreckages all over the place, which is typical for an air domination map. And then something in the clouds started to draw my attention. So I'll slow the video back to normal. And you can see me staring at the clouds. A gamer tag was fading in and out. That black dot that you might or might not see really wasn't all that visible. It was the gamer tag that drew my attention. So I started looking at the aircraft, shifting my nose from left to right. There was another airplane that came up. You'll see him in the lower center right of this screen. I'm not sure if that's an ME-410 or a Mosquito. They kind of look the same. Aircraft turns out to be a Bristol Blenheim. I took a shot at him. He didn't need that elevator. He goes into a vertical climb, and I follow him in. His tail gunner firing at me, and at the worst possible time, my damn guns jam, just as he's firing into my engine. Guns free up, I take a couple of shots at him, and then I stall. And as I go back into my dive, trying to reclaim, trying to just bring the aircraft back to a flying state, I put in a position to where my tail gunner can take a shot at him. You'll see me swinging around with a dead engine, keeping my tail gunner on him. But he continues to get away. And this Blenheim begins climbing over the mountains, the clouds, trying to come up with trying to get out of Dodge. The aircraft closing on him is a teammate. It's yet another Ki-45. He closes in, probably has some very similar cannons, and takes the Blenheim out. So I'm left with a dead engine, roaming around, looking for my 5th kill. And then the game ends. Mission number 8. This time I decided to lead off with the Ki-96. I did not get lost in the clouds while flying the Ki-45 and accidentally crash into a mountain. I would not do that. I decided to lead off with the Ki-96 because it seemed like the wise thing to do. I'm on my least favorite map. I don't know the name of it. It's Alpine or Mountain something or another. It looks like Superman's Fortress of Solitude with all these gigantic finger-like projections just blasting up into the sky, disguising themselves as mountains and such. Anyway, I come upon Wellington, take a few shots at it. This is yet another Wellington pilot who decides to ring his bomber out like it's a fighter plane. But whatever. Those types of pilots are usually fighter pilots who are simply not accustomed to the nuances of a bomber. So they kind of get themselves in trouble. And I'm fine with that. Other people's trouble can sometimes be fortuitous to me in the Ki-96. But nonetheless, this guy flies pretty darn well. He flies in a variety of circles and such, and loops and things, and he's attempting to drop his ordnance on the base, which is not too far away. And there you go. I'm just not going to let him do that. He kind of tumbles down the mountain there for some strange reason. He never really makes contact with anything. Explodes or such. You still see him tumbling down there. I hadn't really flown around. I hadn't had time to really to rejoice in my 5th victory, shooting down my 5th bomber of the day after 4 hours of this stuff. When I heard a bunch of commotion in the chat, it's floating about a year 2 closing on the base. So I had swung the aircraft around, began closing in. I see what I think is a year 2 being pursued by another aircraft, presumably a teammate. I use the zoom to determine that is in fact a year 2. And I only determined that off of the dive angle. I had heard the stories, I'd read the forums. There you go. I took a few shots. Boom. That's the year 2 crashing into the runway. This second year 2 attack I've witnessed in about 4 hours. And 8 games. And it didn't really make me take the year 2 so-called threat seriously because, let's face it, 8 games, 4 hours. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of year 2 action going on. Nonetheless, I'll swing around, let you see what happened. Let you see the damage to the runway. The smoke rising up is from where the aircraft crashed. The black potholes there is where it hit the base. There wasn't really much time left. Both sides had been taking out ground targets quite a bit, and I'd spend the rest of the game just roaming up and down these empty valleys looking for aircraft where there were none. Well, theoretically there was something there, but I never saw it. And there you go. 5 bombers. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please feel free to comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.